Howdy. All right, well, I had a couple days off because I was at a conference. RustConf was awesome. Got to learn a bunch of new stuff. Uh, but I don't think any of that stuff is going to help with the remainder of this project because, well, pretty much everything we have left to do is going to be on the front end. So it's all going to be JavaScript stuff. But for next time, new Rust skills developing, so that's exciting. Um, so I think last time I left a couple of to-dos for myself. One was to make these sections collapsible, and I'm gonna hold off on that one. I'm gonna jump in on something that we don't have an explicit to-do for, which contributes to this one. So what I want to start with is I want to make it so that I can click on these things, these individual collectibles, and send a request to the server, which will update the database. And then I'll do a little checking to validate that the request went through, and hopefully will reflect the new value in the front end. And that should be persisted when we reload the page, because we'll be reading from the database at that time. So that's kind of what I want to start with. And then once we're able to update the values for each collectible, I want to jump into this to-do, which is going to be to basically we'll sort all the stuff that's 100% completed all the way to the bottom of the list, because we don't really need to worry about that if it's all done. We still will want to be able to look at it, but it's not going to need to be at our fingertips. So yeah, promote the stuff that's still to do. So to get in there, I guess I've got some refactoring that needs to happen in here. For the location list, we had a custom component that kind of wrapped what each item looked like. And for the collectibles list, we don't yet have that. We're just using plain list item tags here. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let's see, I guess I'm going to make a new component. For a collectible item. Kind of mirroring the zone item naming. So and as per usual, I'm starting with a regular function style component. Do I want prop types? Yeah, I probably do. Although I'm not sure what I'm going to need just yet. So let's think about this for a sec. We can look at what we're rendering here in the collectible group component, right? Because this is kind of what we're going to be recreating. So we're replacing this inner map section. So we need to know what the active items are. We need to know, well, yeah, I guess so. I would pass in whatever the current state of active items is. So that is going to be prop types array. And I could get more specific, but I'm taking this casual, I guess. What else do we need? We need an item, right? We need a collectible, and I don't have a type associated with these records. That's something that we could do, but I think for the most part, I would rather, if I were to get specific with the type of the data here, I would probably define a shape. So list out the keys that I'm interested in. But again, I'm taking it easy, so I probably won't. So it's just going to be object, which again is going to be required. And what else? I will probably want some kind of a callback. Is that how I want to do this? So something to do with what happens when you check the box, right? So it may not be a checkbox specifically, but so what if I call it like on toggle? Yeah, some kind of callback. The reason I don't want to, let me back this up. The reason I want to use a callback instead of hard coding some behavior in here is that this collectibles item or collectible item component could be put to more than one use theoretically if the behavior is something external that I'm passing in. So that's kind of following a composition style approach to designing this hierarchy of components. I guess that's all I'll say about that for right now. But yeah, rather than defining explicit behavior here, we take something in and we decouple it, which may be overkill for this, but we'll see. We'll see how this works out. Feeling my way through. So at its core, everything that happens within this chunk of code is what we want to happen here. Theoretically. And so by dropping that in there, we identify that there are some things that we need, right? We need to update our imports to grab in class name. I have to adjust some of my object access. The key is not useful here. Because they need to be on the outside wherever the loop is happening. Let's see. All right. No new feedback from the linter. I should figure out a way to get all three of these windows stacked up so I can see them all at the same time, but I'll make do. Oh, actually, I bet there's something I can do, like with yeah, bring it down, Windows. Oh, okay. I wonder if this will work. No, not really, but probably good enough. Okay. I can only dream. So, I got distracted there. So the on toggle is the thing that I'm unsure about right now. Let's see. So yeah, again, I would really just be replacing all of this with collectible item. So we've got props.active items, we've got item, and we've got on toggle, which I am going to punt on. Which I'm going to punt on. So that's an empty function. Then I'm going to line break so it'll fit. I'm going to add back my key based on ID for the item. Okay. So right, okay. Yeah, so that's interesting. This this collected count information, if I'm going to do the downsort that I say I want, in theory, this has to happen further up in the component chain. This would have to that would have to be in the list, not in the group. Not a huge deal, but that would just need to move. So, all right, so with all that done, this appears to be rendering the same, which is good. We are getting, what are we seeing here? Invalid prop active items of type object to collectible item, expected array. So that's a little unexpected to me. What do I want to do? And this is actually stupid because I'm going to get a whole wash of messages. I'll settle for doing this once per group, I guess. To indexed sequence. Oh, right. Okay. Active items is an object because it's an immutable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to I wonder. I think this is how this works. I can say it's an array of number, and it's required, and so now let me find the usage here. So I go up a level, and active items here. What I'll do is I'll once that's all done, and I figured out what the active items are, I'll convert to JS. Which should satisfy the prop types as we've written them. I also want to verify that it works with the empty case. So that should be an empty array now. I'll go back to the collectible group, and let's see. I guess I can do it right here. That should be an empty array, which looks like it's doing the right thing. So that's good. And so to JS is it bothers me a little bit. It's one of those more expensive operations that you can do on an immutable data structure. And the reason for that is most of the operations you do with an immutable JS object is evaluated lazily. And so there's lots of intermediate caching that happens once you've got, I don't know, a series of different traversals happening from the same object. It's almost like in SQL how the query planner can kind of strategize different tactics for like what indexes to hit and how best to cache things. But you're often warned against calling things like toJS because it basically results in a bunch of data copy happening. But in this case, all of the traversals will have happened already, and the size of it should not be that big. The largest it'll be is 48 integers, which is not bad. And on top of that, we're doing it once, basically at the top of our hierarchy, and then passing that same array through. So I think we're okay. But it's worth talking about. You don't want to call this like every time you we enter one of the items, for example. But if we do it once at the top and then reuse reuse that single object time and time again, then it'll be worth it. So okay, our prop types are gonna match all along the way. I guess I'll update this one now. And the notation for this is a little weird since you're doing like nested prop types. Oops. But I mean, I think that makes sense. Okay. So I said that I might want to do some stuff with React Foundation, but I'm going to hold off on that until the very end. For right now, I'm focused on React Foundation is it's kind of like a binding layer for the Foundation CSS framework. But at least to start with, I want to focus on the mechanics. So I'm going to use plain HTML controls for this. So let's see, input type checkbox, and forms in React are always kind of a little weird. So I'm going to have to refer to the docs probably to make this work. But I'm wrapping a label around the text to describe what the checkbox is for and the checkbox itself. And that kind of gives us an interesting property because it actually expands the hit area that triggers the checkbox. So if you notice here, that doesn't work at all. So let's see. Oh. There we go. It helps if you use the right tag. Flip that ENL. Okay. So yeah. What I was about to reach for was to, and this is, I guess, at this point more of an accessibility thing. You can add an attribute to your label saying for, which can take an ID. Yeah, so what we could do if we wanted to make it accessible is we could say item, actually use a template string for it. So item dash, and then let's see, props.item, I guess .id. This probably doesn't help a whole lot. Yeah. And then I would just take this and add a ID property. And this is what you would have to do if, oh, it doesn't like me, HTML4, yeah. The reason I had to change this, they're using a different attribute name because JSX and HTML and JavaScript have kind of clashing keywords in places. That's why when you're defining a CSS class, instead of using class equals, you have to do class name because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So, but yeah, so let's see. In theory, by having a matching ID and for attribute, clicking on the label and the input, they're still linked. And we can see in the DOM here, expand this open a little bit, that it's kind of like what I was going for in the editor. We've got for equals item 23 and then ID equals item 23. That's the same thing. So, and I guess I'll leave it like that. I will drop the input back inside the label though, because I like it that way. All right, cool. So, Oh, and that's interesting. Yeah, I guess that's fine. You know, having the opacity dropped on the stuff that's not in the zone makes it seem like it's disabled. But it's not. It's just, this is a way for me to make the active stuff pop, so I guess there's nothing to do there. I guess that's fine. But I will have to figure out some kind of nice style treatment to go with the stuff that's been collected. We'll see. Okay, so we've got a checkbox. And so, like I was saying, React form controls are they're a little weird, and there are a few different ways to manage them. But I think how I want to do it is I'm going to bind the value to the collected property of the item. And so what should happen now is when I click on this stuff, not what I expected. Damn it, React, always throwing me a curveball. Is it like that? Checked. Okay. Okay, yeah. I guess that's how we do it. We ignore value. Who cares about value? And then I guess it's on click. Then I'm okay. So we'll see if this translates or not. What I may do is end up moving the toggle callback to the list item. I'm not sure, but at any rate, something I will want to do is pull out the event. I'm just going to log out the event when this thing fires. So we'll see if it hits. Okay. So with the checkbox linked to the label and clicking to the label, we're still firing the on click on the checkbox. So that's great. This proxy object is kind of, what do they call it? It's like a synthetic event. React does some juggling to try to make event dispatch a little more memory friendly. I don't know the technical details, but I do know that one of the caveats of this system is that if you expect to hold on to a reference to an event, you need to call a special method on it because they get used as part of like a pool, I think. So there's like an array somewhere of a bunch of synthetic events, and they load in the data from an actual event into one of those of the set, and then they pass it back to you. And you're supposed to like peek at it real quick and then let it go. Because if you don't let it go, then it'll get mutated out from under you at some point. So that's what's happening there. Okay, so let's see. So there are a couple of different ways I can handle this. I think what I want to do is to bake the item ID into the input. And you might say, Owen, you've already done that with the ID property. Well, yes. Yes, I have. And that's something that I could potentially leverage, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use a data attribute instead. So I'm going to do it like this. Because I don't want to have to like carve out the string and like break it up and parse it. I also don't want my application logic to be dependent on that ID field, because I may need to rescope it later. If there was some other component that I wanted to add to my app at a later time, and it made sense for both of them to be called item-some number, well, first of all, that would be illegal. But you can only have one element in the document with a given ID. But I may want to rename both of them at that time to kind of disambiguate. And so anyway, instead, I'll add this data-item-id field. So that attribute is something that I'll be able to read off of the event object, which will be nice. And so let's see. Let's see. So this is one of these situations where I'm going to want to dispatch an action, and I could take this this connected component, right, and I could map in the action with the dispatch here and then pass it along all the way down the chain. But in my opinion, it's probably just as well to yeah. I was going to say it's probably just as well to just get the callback directly from the store down here, but I'm not going to do it. I'm actually going to do it the other way, because it's not that far. 2 layers down, it's fine. So let's see. So I guess I'll call it toggle collectible, no, update collectible collected. Is that how I want to do this? So I'm going to have a collectible ID. I also want the value. Yeah. I think that's what I want. And so what will happen here is I'll return dispatch of hold on. This is kind of wrong, right? So what I learned last time that I forgot about was that I can import action creators from actions. And I can just drop that in there. And if I go back to look at the action creators, I've got an update action active zone. Okay. Then this gets me back to collectible update collected. Yeah. I'm going to shorthand this. I'm going to just call it update collectible. There's only one field that we're changing on collectible. So I'm just gonna call it that. So if I need to do a remote call here, yeah. So we've got a callback that returns a promise, and that goes to collectibles, and this needs to be a template string because I'm going to insert the collectible ID. Oops. And collected and the value. I think that's how I set up the API. There's also one twist, right? So the way REST APIs usually work is they split read, write, and delete operations into different HTTP methods. And so I need my my fetch call to include a configuration object as one of the parameters here. And I believe I can just tell it the method name, which I set up as put. What I'm unsure about is whether or not that needs to be uppercased or what. So if I look at the fetch API docs, I found the docs for fetch to not be that awesome. But okay, so they're referring to this as init. That's the object for configuring stuff. Okay, and so they're using uppercase here in the example. So I guess I'll do that. We'll see if it doesn't work. That'll be pretty clear. Okay. Yeah. That looks right. Wonder why they called it init. Doesn't matter. I'm trying to think of like how long ago it was where I was naming functions init. I guess that was kind of big in the jQuery scene. There would be init functions on plugins and stuff. Anyway, I'm reminiscing now. So I'll have a resp, which I will stub out here real quick, and an error. And if I remember on the last couple of examples I had here, right, I was just going to log out the error to start and then dispatch a failure action, which we can do. Let's look at what this is called, because this is a longer one. Collectible update collected fail. Okay. And then for the win, for this one, oops, I would dispatch another action for, let's see, there's the success, and I'm also going to have some data, I hope. So let's see. I think I had that set up slightly differently here. I handled the success as part of a second step, because this is also a promise when you decode the response into JSON. So that works. I'll stick with that scheme. I think that's it. Get the CSS out of here while I'm working through this. And actually, just going to add some extra line breaks here just to make it a little easier on me. So there we go. We're fetching. We're using the put method, and then we're decoding the JSON or logging the failure. I just realized that that this is actually sort of swallowing the error, and so is that right? I'm not sure. I haven't really tested the failure handling that well. Oh. Too true, compiler. Too true. I named a thing that didn't exist. There we go. See, what I was wondering about was if I return another promise from the error branch of this callback, will I then proceed back on to run this then, or what? Is data in that case going to be the error? I don't know. I may never find out. This may just all work well all the time because it's in a tightly controlled situation, but something to think about. So, okay, so we've got an update collectible in there. The collectible list has got the action creators, which means that when I create my groups, I'll need to pass that in as a callback. So let's see. And my naming is getting weaker and weaker, but oops. And on item toggle is what I actually called it. And so that means that my toggle event, let's see what I can do about this. What I'd like is for there to be a fixed function to extract all the information I need. Yeah. To extract the information I need from the event. So, get item details. Get item update details. Yeah, that's weird. And so what I'd like is for there to be two things. I want an ID, and I want a value. And I'm going to get those from the event object, and then I'm going to return ID and value. So let's see, event dot, uh-oh. My virus scanner is super mad. Oh, because it's time to run. Jesus Christ. I guess I don't normally compute at 9 p.m. on Sunday. It's almost done. You can do it, Kaspersky. Anyway. I'm going to trust that it's going to stop eating my CPU here in just a sec. So data set is a property on HTML nodes, which event target should be the input. So this is how I'm gonna get all that information that I want. What did I call it? Item ID? Yeah. And so I also need the value, which is interesting. I guess I can read the value from data set also. What I sort of would like is to consult the store, but that would be too much, I think. Anyway, so I think actually, no, that won't work. I'm going to do old value. No, current value, like that. And then over here, gotta kebab case it for the attribute names. Okay. So I should now be able to call this all right, I'm renaming. Oops. I'm gonna do handle toggle, and it's gonna take care of everything in here. It's gonna be my static callback for all toggle needs. And I'm going to use this to verify first that things are working how I think they should. So it's always false. And so this is part of what I was thinking about but wasn't articulating well. I want to separate myself from the value of the checkbox. I don't want to be concerned about that. The value of the checkbox is going to be read-only. I'm not sure I like that, though. So let's look at what target value is. Maybe this is actually what I want. On. I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna work with it. So we're gonna remove this. We're gonna drive the request based on the current value of the checkbox, which is in theory being driven by this attribute on the item itself. So it's a little indirect, but that should be correct. Yeah, we'll see. The interesting thing about that is that hopefully I won't be able to like thrash the input. Like I won't be able to click over and over again. It'll send a bunch of requests, but the requests should all get the same answer back when they're done. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. What I wouldn't want is to basically update the state of the checkbox on the client side only, flip it back and forth, and then send alternating requests to the server. Because then who knows, like, if the requests were to be handled out of order somehow. I don't know. It's kind of gross. Anyway. So. So with handle toggle, what else do I need? I guess I would need to give it access to the action creator. So, if I need that, then I don't really save a whole lot. I guess just going to shorten it. I'm going to call it dispatch because I'm doing an action. And the reason why I'm kind of like wringing my hands here is that I would like to avoid defining a new function inside of my component. I'm back to this. I'm just going to return an object with the ID and the value, and I'm going to create a new function right in here. So handle toggle takes an event, and then from the event I get my ID and value, and then I will call props dot update collectible, which takes an ID and a value. I need a keyword here so that I can make my assignment. Right? Oh. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So I'm going to watch the network tab briefly. I'm going to limit it to XHR. So for making those HTTP requests to the server. And let's see what happens when I hit this. Okay. Update collectible is not a function. Oh, really? Yeah, it's not. It's totally not. All right. You called me out. That's fair. Okay, so we got a 404. And so let's take a look at the headers here and debug this a little bit. So I can see the full URL that was generated. Oh, right, yeah. So this is incorrect. And I bet that's exactly what happened here. So I see that the method put was what was sent. And that's all good. So the handler, let's see if we can pull that up. Oops. So collectibles, ID, collected, and then the value here. So we're casting it to bool, and the way that Rocket handles URL dispatch, it looks at the format of the string, and then it checks to make sure that each of the placeholders line up with the data types that we're requesting in the parameter list. And so if on doesn't look like a Boolean value, it's gonna just reject it. Really, I probably would have responded with a 400 client error, and that's something that I may customize a little later. But yeah, so if I want to fix this, my value, I could compare this to on. And so if value equals on, it's going to be true. Otherwise, it's going to be false. So this should be a Boolean value now. And so we'll try again. Okay, there we go. So we got a 200 back. We got true at the end of the URL there. And if I open up, let's see. We don't have anything to loop back around to the UI to update it. But if I open a console on the SQL here, select star from collectibles where collected equals 1, I get one row back, and it is Golova fruit C, aka it's a large fruit. So there it is. So now the next thing for me to do is to basically handle the success in my reducers. So let's see, how do I want to do this? So I know that I'm dispatching an action which is gonna send a collectible update collected success. And if I look at my reducers, I don't have anything listening for that. What I need is for the collectibles reducer to kind of intercept it and act upon it. So I think it's singular. Update collected. Yes, there it is. I'm actually going to drop this down to the last non-default. Okay. So in the case that we see this action being dispatched, we should hope that the action has some data on it. And also, state has the current collection, which is going to be an immutable JS map. So what I need to know, because I don't know off the top of my head, is what method an immutable map has that I can call to update the value of a given key, because we want to replace the entry for whatever the ID is that we just sent. So I'm going to look at, going to look at map, wherever that went. Here we go. And we've got set returns a new map also containing the new key value pair, and if the equivalent key is already there, it's going to get replaced. So that's exactly what I want. We pass it a key and a value. I wonder about the data type of that key. Actually, let's go back to our extraction method here. So when you pull data out of when you pull data out of an attribute on an HTML DOM node, basically it's a string. It's always going to be a string. And so if you want it to behave like some other type, you have to parse it out. So we're going to parse int, and int takes up base. Number optional. Yeah, I guess it is optional, but a lot of editors get mad at you if you don't have it. It's part of the linting rules, I think. Yeah, so I want a base 10 integer when I run this. Okay, so back to the reducers. So we learned that set is the method. So if we have the original state object, which is the current map, we should be able to call set on that with action data ID, and then action data is going to be, and I should have checked to make sure that this was correct, but the payload, the response from our put request, should be the updated row for whatever row we asked the change to be made to. So So this should be the entire collectible. This should be the ID of the collectible. This should be the map of collectibles that we're starting with. And so, yeah, look at that. So because we're feeding that new, here's the response, that new row that we got back from the server back into the map, and our item component is looking at the collected field to populate the checked box. That isn't good. Interesting. I've got something else to figure out here. But anyway, because the checked property of the input is looking at this property of the object, that's why it's updating now. So I got to figure out why it always wants to send true, because that's unfortunate. If I rerun that query, let's see. Oops. How many do I have? Looks like quite a few, actually. I'm just stacking them up. So okay, we're making an impact on the database now, so that's good. But why? Why is it always coming out true? Is it because we're looking at the value? Let's put a breakpoint right here, because maybe what we need to be looking at is target.checked. Maybe value really doesn't matter. Because I may have just forgotten. So let's see. Oh. Yeah, look at that. I guess, so React is telling me that there's an onChange handler here. OnChange. I'm not exactly sure which way I want this to go, but anyway, what this breakpoint here was set to learn was what there is on the event.target that I can inspect. So let's see. So checked is a thing. Value, I think, oops, if I remember correctly, value is gonna be just a string piece of data that would get sent when the form is submitted when the checked state is true. So value is probably always going to be on by default unless I change it. But let's take a quick look. React checkbox, because I'm sure this is documented and I just haven't had to had to deal with it, so. Yeah, see, they're doing basically what I just said there. They're extracting the value by seeing if the input is a checkbox, and if it is, and oh no, there's okay, they're only looking at the checked. They're only looking at the checked. Well, that kind of gets me back to what I didn't want in the first place, which is the potential for flip-flopping, letting the checkbox drive itself. I'll go with it. I guess I'll go with it. I wonder if I can keep this though, if that's like for an initial state or what. I'm going to also check that React tips article. Let's see what they say. Yeah, okay. I don't really care that much. So, change of plan. Change of plan. I'm going to try and leave this. We're going to work with checked. Yeah. I was just thinking about whether or not it would be checked or not checked. You know, if I need to flip the Boolean on it. Okay, so that's sent false. Yeah. Yeah, that's sent false. Okay, interesting. So what I want is to clear out that breakpoint. Where did I leave that? The initial state seems to be working. We're sending false, and we're sending true, depending on whatever the current state of the checkbox is, which is all right. So what I'd like to do is to basically, I'm going to kill the server and see how this reacts when I try to push a request to it. If it leaves the checkbox flipped and our state gets out of sync or what. So here's Markhor, and I push it and I get an error and the checkbox doesn't update, which is exactly what I would want, which is great. Okay. Sold. That works for me. All right, this looks great. And so if I click through and I get all of the mushrooms, then this gives us the test case for our next thing. But for floating the section down when everything on it is checked. But first, I'll try to wipe the slate clean here. So try to get a quick commit in. We had a bunch of proxy errors in here. No other linter output. It was just it was concerned because I was trying to post or put requests to the server that was dead. So good. So I'm still a little loose on the names for these callbacks. Maybe I'll give another pass for naming. We'll see. So we've got a handle toggle callback, which is baked in to the which component is this? The collectible group. So each group gets its own handle toggle callback. Well, I guess. That's a little inefficient. If it bothered me a whole lot, I could move this probably further up. Is it in here because group is not tied to the store? There's no connect being called here. We're passing a item toggle. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to clean this up. That's right. So we're going to do this and this. This all happens. This all happens in instead of this. So by moving it up to the top component, I'm reducing the number of times that I need to basically build the same function, which is good. Just trying to figure out where I want to put it here. I guess it's going to be in right in here. So get item details stays the same. What would be different here is props.update collectible is what I'm calling here, which is good because now I've encapsulated the full usage. So I see very clearly that I'm passing the ID and the value into this thing, which is like a well-known action creator, because it's like all in the same scope. And so handle toggle just drop that in there. And the reason why I need to define this inside of my component, which I would kind of like to avoid, but I guess it doesn't matter that much. The cost is low since I'm up at the top and the list is going to get instantiated like one time early on. Sorta. No, this gets defined every render, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's better than being down here once per group. So that's the win. And now collectible group wants to know what I'm talking about with this. This becomes on item toggle. Now things are happy again. Okay, good. And again, this is why I try to read my entire diff before I make a commit every time, because sometimes you miss things that you forget about stuff that you had been working on when you're thrashing back and forth on a problem. So we've renamed that stuff. We've got an on item toggle being passed into the group. We've got an on toggle being passed into the item, and I'm okay with the disparity between those two names because one is more specific because it's in a more general scope, and then on toggle can only apply to the item when it's inside the item, so that's not so bad. We've got some accessibility considerations being taken. We've got the HTML4 attribute and the ID on the checkbox. And again, these widgets will potentially be replaced by React Foundation widgets right at the end, which may have their own accessibility hooks, but I think that's probably as far as I'll take it for right now. And then let's see, in the collectible list, we've got that extractor method that I hoisted out there, pulling the ID and the checked value off of the checkbox. We're using that to build our callbacks to pass down. We're also converting active items into a JS array. Yeah. Trying to think why converting to a JS array is really important. I know we were looking at that earlier, but I guess it was just because I had that prop type defined down at the bottom. So theoretically, I could skip it, right? I could leave active items as an immutable. And then collectible group and collectible item will both cry out. This is kind of a downgrade in terms of validation, but I reserve the right to flip-flop all day long. Yeah. Okay. All right, and we added a update collectible action creator, which will make a put request to the server and trigger an action dispatch depending on whether it worked or didn't, which is great. I'm also thinking about maybe adding some feedback into this. So the item, you'll notice there's a delay. How long? It's weird. It like alternates between it alternates between like 20 to 30 milliseconds and 300. What is up with that? That's bizarre. That doesn't make sense to me. I'll need to do a little research and see why that is. But anyway, so part of my idea was to basically, as part of the action flow during this update collectible, I could dispatch an action that would say, okay, this specific item is pending a change, and I could like dim it out or disable the input or something like that while it's working, and then I can release it at the end. And that's something I think I would like to do, because frantically alternating values, like I'm a little worried about out of order requests going through. Yeah. So I'll think about that. Should be kind of trivial to add in, especially since we're already using promises in the action creator. So I should be able to sequence it out with a series of thens and catches. But yeah, okay, so that's not too bad. Okay, so we got that committed. I am going to take just a couple of minutes. I'm going to get a new drink, and I will be right back. All right, I'm back. So let's see what's next. So now that we've got new values going through to the database, we should be able to start looking at sorting our groups, right? So dealing with this to-do. And so I guess really all I would need for this, since I proved earlier in the series that we can sort by an array as if it was a tuple, and it'll use each successive value to do the comparisons. I should be able to say, okay, oh, right, okay, but so the items for each group are stored separately. They're on a separate map. I was going to say I could just like do x.items and something like this. Let's see if I should just leave the docs open for this. So if I look at list, does it have an all method? No, I guess not. We've got a find, we've got a min and max by. Keys values. Count and count by. Sum and every. Every is what I want. Yeah. So this won't actually work the way I need it to, but my idea was to do like every collected. I guess really if I wanna do some not collected to raise it up. That sounds right. So let's see. In order to get this situation to be possible, I need to transform the data structure that we're mapping over, and I need to basically do this step earlier on in the pipeline. So I would basically be operating on pairs, so I'll use destructuring syntax like this. And so I would need destructuring syntax all the way along. And so this is where we pivot our data. So we were operating on a list of categories up until this point, where I transform the list into a list of pairs. We get the category is the first item in the pair, and then we get the list of items that go in that category for the second pair. Yeah. And so each callback that we define after that can then break the pair up into its individual pieces. And because I'm dealing with more than one thing at this point, I'm gonna expand out the names. Let's try that again. Then I can flip to using the short one-letter variables there while I'm mapping over the items. So how does that work? Okay. So we've got a 4 of 4 here and a 7 of 7 here. So this sort doesn't appear to be doing quite what I hoped. So how do I debug this? I guess, well, first of all, I want to verify that that my data looks the way that I assume it does. So I'll drop a breakpoint inside of this sort by call so that I can inspect a little bit of the data. So if category is what I think it is, yes, it is an ID and a name. And then items, what do you look like? If I convert you to JS, I have an array. Okay. I have an array. And so I should be able to like add a watch at this point. And what will my watch will be items dot sum so I'm looking for a true when any of them are not collected. And so we've got a collected false there, so that's good. So now I should be able to step through. And so here's a false. Which group is this? Frogs. And if I keep going through, fruits is false, medic plants is false, mushrooms is false. Okay. Oh. All right, yeah, I guess what I meant, if I want the sort that I say I want, the collected status should be first. And the category name should be after. And so that's working more how I want it, except it's going the opposite direction. So how do I want to rephrase this? I guess I would, oh no, I guess I would just flip that around. Some collected. I guess that's fine. I wasn't sure how this would translate into an ascending or descending order. Yeah, that's not what I want either. That is not what I want either. I don't want 0 to be the automatic top dog. I want yeah. Because I want it to be mostly static until everything is collected and then it floats back down. And I was hoping that I would be able to do this check without having to inspect every single one. So maybe what I want is not some, and then a not on the front. I'm getting desperate here. That's what that looks like, but let's see. So if I uncheck all of that, it stays where it is. If I check all 3, fishes goes down. The important thing here is that by using some, I make sure that I don't have to visit each individual element in the array. If there's a value discovered early that doesn't conform to what I'm looking for, if I do every, then I'm always inspecting the full collection every time. What I'm unsure about, no, I guess this is what I want. That's what I want. So we got the down sort going. Yep. Great. Great. Yeah, that all looks correct. So I guess damn, what's the quickest way to reset? I guess I would just open up this console again. it gets like that. Reset. Good. Good. Okay. So what now? We got the down sort. We've got values getting updated in the database. I had talked about collapsible sections. That's still on my list of things to do, but I don't think I want to do that right now. I think if I'm going to do collapsible sections, I want to look at the React Foundation stuff first and see maybe there's components that lend themselves to that kind of thing already built in. I guess I'm coming up on 2 hours, so maybe I'll just set this aside for right now. And I'll take a quick look at the foundation stuff offline. Yeah, and then hopefully I can wrap this up tomorrow so I can actually play some Metal Gear. Oh, a big to do is gonna be keyboard navigation. I haven't looked at that yet, but that's something to worry about. Hopefully it won't be too bad. We'll see. But yeah, so I guess I will leave those commits where they are and do a little research. Oh, I guess I should tidy that up. I don't mean to. Yeah. So that'll do it. We're getting close. I want to play Metal Gear, so gotta finish it up. For right now, though, I guess thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.